Okay, Council, it looks like we're ready to go. Tonight is the City Council special meeting, 6:35 p.m. on Tuesday, July 13th, 2021. First is our roll call. Lita?
Mayor Karen Moran.
Present.
Deputy Mayor Christy Mauchow.
Present.
Councilmember Ken Gamlin.
Present.
Councilmember Tom O'Dell.
Present.
Councilmember Chris Ross.
Present.
Councilmember Pamela Stewart.
Here.
Councilmember Kent Treen.
Present.
We got a full crew. Excellent. Meeting accessibility. Pursuant to the Governor's Emergency Proclamation 20-28, the city is unable to provide an in-person location for the public to listen to the virtual City Council meeting this evening. Meetings are still accessible to the public, and public comment is able to be submitted. To view live, the city website is www.sammamish.us/TV21. City YouTube and Comcast Channel 21 within Sammamish only. To view later, meeting videos are available the day after the meeting, again on city website, www.sammamish.us/TV21, on YouTube, and on Comcast Channel 21 within Sammamish only. Pledge of Allegiance. Well, there you can, Councilmember Gamblin, you've got the flag. How about if you lead us?
Yep. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States,
The flag of the United States of America,
which it stands
to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Councilmember. I'm looking for first step, which is our approval of our agenda.
Move to accept. Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the agenda as written, say aye.
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 Opposed? Excellent. Public comment. Pursuant to the Governor's Emergency Proclamation 20-25, the city is unable to provide an in-person location for the public to listen to the virtual City Council meeting this evening. Meetings are still accessible to the public, and public comment is able to be submitted. Written public comment will be accepted until 5 p.m. on the day of the meeting. Submit your written comments via email to the city clerk at lhatchie@sammamish.us and the city council at citycouncil@sammamish.us. Verbal comment, up to 3 minutes of verbal comment, may be provided per person live during the meeting. Call the following number, input the access code when prompted by 6:30 p.m. the day of the meeting. The phone number, 1-571-317-3122. The access code, 929-348-197. Lita?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We currently have 3 people who have called in to provide public comment tonight. I will unmute callers in the order they have joined the meeting. When it is your turn, you will hear an automated voice say, unmuted, and then you will have 3 minutes to provide comment. 15 seconds before your 3 minutes is complete, I will provide a time warning. At 3 minutes, you will be muted. Please start your comment by stating your name, the city that you live in for the record. I will now unmute the first caller. Caller number 1.
Former Deputy Mayor Romero Valderrama from Sammamish. In October 2019, Sammamish was recognized as the wealthiest city in America. Since that time, it appears that this council has done everything in its power to bankrupt the city. On June 30th, the Growth Management Hearing Board stated Sammamish was non-compliant with the GMA and difficult to pinpoint when, if ever, there will be compliance. July 1st, the Growth Management Hearing Board asked the governor to make the rare move of sanctioning Sammamish for violations of the GMA in urban growth, housing, and economics. The governor has the authority to impose sanctions that include taking away motor vehicle fuel tax, transportation tax, sales tax, liquor tax, excise liquor tax, real estate REIT tax of $12 million a year to Sammamish. Also at risk are state grants. When used against Chelan County in '96, then Chelan quickly fired their attorney for who they had paid $100,000 for unsound advice. Ironically, Sammamish has allocated $300,000 for Peter Ecklick firm, and that's in addition to the Kenyon Deason and the city attorney who won a bill of over $3 million from $800,000 before. Tuesday, the city council's response was to give yet another $100,000 with no strings to the same law firm. This attitude of the council defies belief or concern of proper use of city's taxpayer funds in the pandemic. In my quick estimation, we're estimated to potentially lose $25 million. This is the same council that has run the first deficit of the city of $5.6 million, following an incurring an annual operation loss of $2 million plus, and a used $7.5 million of restricted funds that have to be paid back. This in part because they had used department contingency funds of $9 million. Now they've raised property taxes 6% during the pandemic, and they cut $34 million in infrastructure capital projects that they said that they desperately wanted. Not content with past damage, the council now is feigning that unexpected ballooning costs of the maintenance facility of over $2.5 million, the fire station rebuild, which has an option of up to $14 million from its original estimate, and the council now blames past councils for the cost of Issaquah Falls City Road, despite myself having raised the false assumption and gross estimates in August 2015, as cited by both of our papers and the Sammamish comment. The problem, as they said, was I did not have a majority. Deputy Mayor Malchow and Moran and the rest of the council knew the numbers were reflecting. The majority never used those years to discuss this road project. Why? Instead of paying for another investigation and furthering the destruction, maybe the council should focus on stabilizing the finance.
Thank you.
I will now unmute the second caller. Caller number 2.
Hello, my name is Maria Wichter, and I've lived in Sammamish for 20 years. Safety is number one and top priority, and it should be. I've actually heard I've heard this from each and every one of you on council, and tonight I ask you to act in support of safety. I urge council to act tonight to make a traffic route for Lewis Thompson Road a maximum of 25 miles per hour instead of the 35 miles per hour speed limit with just warnings of 20 and 20 miles per hour at the curves. Lewis Thompson Road is just under a mile long. It takes under 2 minutes to drive up. And when you drive 25 miles per hour instead of 35 miles per hour, it only takes 3/4 of a minute longer. That's 45 seconds. So that doesn't seem like very much difference in travel time, and it really isn't. But it's an absolutely essential and vital to safety. When you have a posted speed limit of 25 miles per hour, it means you have more time to see, react, have less chance of accidents, and will likely save a life. And I urge you to make a motion tonight to move 25 miles per hour for Lewis Thompson Road. That will help multiple school buses who will pick up and drop off and drive along this, children, driving teens, wildlife, and public safety for anyone who uses Lewis Thompson Road to either drive, bicycle, or walk. And it does include waiting at the roadside for school bus stops. And tonight you're considering Ebright Creek Fish Culvert Passage, which I believe you do need to extend, and I don't mind the amount of time it's being done, but you're putting more traffic on already busy roads, and we need to keep people safe so that we can save lives rather than save 45 seconds by not doing it. So I ask you to look at that. As a second topic tonight, you have the stormwater rate study. I was here in 2016 when there was massive work done for stormwater to get us from 1998 and 2009 code. And I wanted to say that for both the stormwater retrofit strategy from last meeting on the 6th of July and the stormwater rate study tonight, which is item 10 in the packet, the drainage complaints are very real. And basin plans do identify key areas of concern. They rank, detail, and prioritize the CIP lists projects to address the issues. And if you don't address issues, they get worse over time, and they can cause very big problems. And capital improvement projects, which have been identified, have also been prioritized and ranked and need to be added to projects list so they can get done in a timely manner. The Zachary Basin Plan is listed on page 77, but the CIPs aren't listed from it, even the very top ranked ones. And the related work is ready to be scheduled, and there has already been millions of dollars of grant funding. So I ask that Council give full support to the stormwater rate study, and that ensure drainage complaints and top priority CIPs are included, and that they are put on project lists with funding allocated so they can get done before, like the Lewis Lumpson slide repair happened, which was a $1.3 million.
Thank you.
That concludes the callers for tonight.
I want to thank all of our callers this evening. Okay, the first thing we've got is an executive session, and it is for litigation pursuant to RCW 42.30.1101I. What do you?
Look, Karen, we might want to add G to that as well.
Do I hear a second for that? He wants to add G.
Need a second.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to add G to executive session. All those in favor for adding G to executive session, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, so we're going to be going into executive session for litigation pursuant to RCW 42.30.1101I and also RCW 42.30.1101G. And so I guess let's move that to 45 minutes.
I think it's going to be at least an hour.
I agree.
Okay, that means if we end early, then we're going to have time open again at the end. Are you all okay with that? Okay.
Yep.
All right, then we'll take it to 1 hour, meaning that we will be back here at 7:50. Again, this is a City Council special meeting. It is now 10 to 8. We are going to be extending executive session. Again, this is July 13th, 2021. We're extending executive session. It is 10 to 8. We're going to be extending for 20 minutes. This is the City Council meeting, July 13th, 2021. And it is 8:20. We are extending our executive session for 30 minutes. So we will be extending our executive session for 30 minutes, and the time is 8:20. Thank you. Okay, welcome back. We are back from executive session. We're back to our public meeting, July 13th, 2021. Picking up where we left off. We are on to consent calendar, and I'm looking for a motion to...
Madam Mayor, I was in the queue. I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda, please.
Okay.
I'd like to add the repeal of ordinance 2021-529 as item 13 under new business, please.
Second.
Okay, wait a minute. So Not on consent calendar, or not on regular calendar, but okay. Is it under consent calendar?
No. No, this is an addition of items. So this would be 13 under new business.
All right, so this is on, all right, hang on. So we're adding to the agenda that we approved. Okay. All right, and you would like to add?
The repealing of ordinance 2021-529.
Okay, could you please state that for me, Lisa?
The correct ordinance number is ordinance number 532, repealing ordinance 529. Thank you.
Got it. Thank you.
That is correct.
There's a terrible feedback. Okay, somebody's got a mic open? Okay. Okay, thank you. All right, so we're going to be adding that to new business. Let's add that to 13. Okay. All right, consent calendar. We're going to go back to that. Okay, we've got a motion on the floor. Okay, all those in. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of the addition of adding 532 and repealing 252. 529, jeez. I'm going to end up being dyslexic tonight, too. Okay. As per adjusted, I'll say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we're moving. Oh, okay. It is a 6-1. And we will be adding that onto new business, number 13. And then quickly, we have got a whole lot of our police in the back of the room, so we're going to run through this. Next up is our consent calendar. And I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those.
Councilmember Adele?
Hearing none. All those in favor?
Wait, Karen, I sent an email today requesting that 5 and 6 be removed. Is that part of this?
Okay, so 5.
Yeah, now would be the time.
Okay, I'm going to move them to, okay, I'm going to put them in unfinished business. Okay. All those in favor of the consent calendar as adjusted, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Excellent, 7-0. Next up, we have a proclamation this evening for our Sammamish Police Recognition. And we have a lot in the back of the room here. I'm thrilled. And I love seeing that we get to have you guys all back in here. It's good to see everybody. And the proclamation this evening is going to be read by Councilmember Ross.
Mayor, thank you. Thank you for giving me the honor to read this. I feel very strongly about this proclamation. This is a proclamation recognizing and honoring Sammamish Police Department, July 2021. Whereas the law enforcement officers of Sammamish Police Department work devotedly and unselfishly on behalf of the people of our community, regardless of peril or hazard to themselves, and whereas by their service and their dedicated efforts, these men and women have earned the gratitude of the Sammamish community, and whereas it is important that the people of our community know and understand the duties and responsibilities of their police department to serve the people by safeguarding life and property.
Okay, oh, stop. They're saying they can't hear.
They lost me.
We want to make sure we pick you up on the recording. Councilmember Odell, can you hear me?
Can't hear him.
Please enter your access code followed by the pound or hash sign. To enable audio controls, please enter your audio PIN followed by the pound or hash sign. If you do
Can you hear me now? Can you hear me?
Karen, we can hear you.
All right. Okay. We are going to take this from the top again. We have got Councilmember Ross. He's going to be reading the proclamation this evening, recognizing and honoring our Sammamish Police Department.
Thank you, Mayor. Whereas the law enforcement officers of Sammamish Police Department work devotedly and unselfishly on behalf of the people of our community, regardless of peril or hazard to themselves, and whereas by their service and their dedicated efforts, these men and women have earned the gratitude of the Sammamish community, and whereas it is important that the people of our community know and understand the duties and responsibilities of their police department to serve the people by safeguarding life and property, and whereas there are more than 800,000 law enforcement officers serving in communities across the United States, including the dedicated members of the Sammamish Police Department and King County Sheriff's Office, and whereas since the first recorded death in 1791, more than 24,000 law enforcement officers in the United States have made the ultimate sacrifice and been killed in the line of duty, and 368 of those officers were killed in 2020, and 159 killed so far in 2021. And whereas some 60,000 assaults against law enforcement officers are reported each year, resulting in approximately 16,000 injuries, and whereas law enforcement officers across our nation were recognized during National Police Week, May 9th through May 15th, 2021, for their service and sacrifice. Therefore, during National Night Out on August 3rd, 2021, we encourage all Sammamish residents to display the American flag from homes and businesses in recognition of our honorable Sammamish Police Department. Now, therefore, be it resolved, on behalf of Mayor Moran of Sammamish, Washington, and the Sammamish City Council, we do hereby publicly salute the service of law enforcement officers in our community and communities across the nation. Thank you.
Hear, hear.
Madam Mayor, if I can just make a comment.
Absolutely. Councilmember Odell.
Just looking at the numbers that Chris is reading, I was struck by one thing. If you divide the number of people killed in the last 20 years in Afghanistan on the U.S. military, it's about the same number on an annual basis. That's striking.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Ross. Okay, so we're gonna go backwards to unfinished business, and we're gonna cancellation of July 20th. And Councilmember Odell.
Yeah, that was me again. In light of what's happened the last couple of weeks, I think it's premature for us to cancel at this point. We can cancel 24 hours ahead of time, but I'd like to keep it on the calendar as a contingency situation. Conversely, we can always call a special meeting, but this might be a little less of a hassle if we did that. Again, if there's nothing to talk about, I don't want to meet, but if there is, we should have the ability to meet. And I think we can make that decision 24 hours ahead of time. That's all I have. Thank you.
Okay, is there any other discussion? Okay, well, I'm going to need a motion by somebody, one way or the other.
Actually, we don't need a motion if we're not going to cancel it, so.
It's true. Okay.
That is true.
All right.
But do we need a vote?
Well, I move that we cancel the 20th meeting.
I'll second that.
No second. All right. Thank you, Karen. Mayor Moran.
Discussion? Yeah, for me, I just think that, the staff, yeah, you can cancel it 24 hours in advance, but staff gets the stuff out and ready to us, by Wednesday. So they would have to be working on this, packing it, and getting it to us within the next 24 to 48 hours. And yeah, we need to be telling them today whether they're going to be doing their packet tomorrow. So it just seems like we're...
Okay, we'll go to special meeting.
Okay. All those in favor of canceling the meeting on the 20th, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Nay.
Okay. Could you get a read on that? She's going to probably want to see a show of hands.
Mayor
Well,
Moran,
Christie dropped off.
did you want me to do a roll call to find out? Mayor Moran,
Aye.
Deputy Mayor Christy Moucho,
Has left.
oh. Councilmember Ken Gamblin,
Aye.
Councilmember Tom Odell,
Nay.
Councilmember Chris Ross,
Aye.
Councilmember Pamela Stewart,
Nay.
Councilmember Kent Treen.
Aye.
That's a 4-2 with Christy absent.
Okay. Motion passes 4-2. Okay. The next is approval community visioning project contract. And this again is Councilmember Odell.
Thank you. I was kind of surprised to see this again. I know it came up before, but I wonder if we really need to do this, or if we'd be better off spending the money on a community survey. The past procedure was that every couple of years or so we ran an accurate community survey by telephone, which really got down to a whole lot of issues, not just a single issue. And I don't know if we're still doing that, but I would suggest we probably want to think about it and maybe reallocate the funds associated with this to that effort. At the same time, I think that we had a input from the community today that provided a little history, and frankly, the statement adopted in 2015, I think, is still appropriate, and I'm not sure why we need to do this again. But if the rest of the council thinks it's a good idea, I would go along with it. But I would suggest this one is something that could be better used elsewhere. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any other comments? Now, it was my understanding that this one in 2015, wasn't this done at a retreat in some place? Wasn't this done at a retreat?
It was.
Okay.
I was there.
Okay, so was this done at a, so it was done at a retreat, so it wasn't done, I mean, I think the comment was it was done at a retreat sort of thing, so the community input was limited. So I think the idea was to try to get a lot of community input, which is, I mean, that's kind of where, from the standpoint of getting a lot of more community input, I'm good with that. I don't know if it changes anything.
The interesting thing was, Karen, we're all asked individually as homework ahead of time to write up a vision statement. And when we got to the retreat, it was interesting, almost uncanny, how close all 7 of us were. And seeing as we are a form of representing the government, I took that to be good. But if we want to spend the money to survey the community, I'm okay, but I think it's $60,000.
Okay, well, the other thing is, we've had a lot of changes in our community in 7 years.
That's true. But a survey might do a better job of that.
That's true. I mean, that's very true.
I think it's it.
Anybody else have any thoughts on this?
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm in the queue.
Okay, Councilmember Stewart and Councilmember Treen.
Yeah, I think to Councilman Burdell's point, I guess it would be great if staff could give us a quick for the community to all be on track, right? To look at the project. If I understand this work to be more than just a new vision statement, but to be gathering that input, and that a survey would be part of it, but that we wanted to get input on the needs and the wants from the community, and to make sure that we did that in an all-inclusive way, and that we were able to reach all parts of the community, and specifically include groups like the youth of the community, since they make up such a large portion of our community, to make sure that we're understanding what do people need and what do they want in our city, because there seems to be a lot of debate, and there's a fear that we may be listening to some echo chambers on social media, and we're not getting a full picture of what the entire community wants. So I don't know if someone from staff could just speak to this very quickly and give a picture to everyone, so we're all on the same page of what the scope here is, because I don't think it's just to create a new vision statement. That may be one of the outcomes, but we definitely need a statistically significant, well-crafted survey. I think from my perspective, I've done a number of these at work, and we always hire a professional, because writing survey questions is it is a science. It is not something that just anyone can do. And so it's really important that the survey questions are written in a way to actually the viewpoint of the survey taker, and they're not leading questions based on the survey writer. And I don't mean to be critical, but I know we wrote a survey during COVID, and one of the concerns I had was it asked people if they had any issues accessing broadband, but the only way to take the survey was on. And so that's the kind of thing you got to be careful of when you're writing a survey. That is not a helpful question to ask if the only way to take it is online. I would to get a lot of people complaining about the lack of access to broadband in the survey responses. So, and again, I would like to see if we're going to do a survey like this. I'd love to see something that's like mailed to every household, in addition to giving people the option of taking it online, so that we're not just getting those people who are following along on social media, but to really get information from a broad swath of the community.
Okay, thank you. I would agree. And Lita, could you answer some of those questions for us? Oh, Lita, okay. David Pyle.
Mayor Moran, David Pyle, Director of Community Development Department. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen with the agenda bill for tonight's meeting, which includes a brief snippet in there regarding the project scope. I have to minimize a window here just a second. So this states the project scope includes a statistically valid survey mailed to a random sample of approximately 4,000 to 5,000 Sammamish households, a range of interactive in-person outreach and virtual events in coordination with community groups, organizations, and schools. Additionally, the consultant will develop a digital outreach toolkit and online content for Connect Sammamish. All feedback gathered will be integrated into a final report that will be used to review and update the city's vision statement. So I guess the point here is that this is not actually the creation of the vision statement. This is the prep work, as Councilmember Stewart suggested, that goes into surveying the community to help us and assist the council in assembly of a vision statement, or review of the existing vision statement, and potentially there are no changes that need to be made. This work will also help us as we embark on our comprehensive plan update. It'll be really valid information to help us assist us in identifying where we need to look at some policy changes. I hope that helps explain what this proposal is here.
Thank you, Mr. Pyle. Okay, Councilmember Treen.
Yeah, I make a motion that we proceed with the vision statement in the project with the.
Second.
As written.
Okay, and then I'm.
Like to speak to this.
Okay, I'm going to go to questions, and I'm seeing Councilmember Stewart.
Can I speak to that too as well,
Yes,
Madam Mayor?
Please address it.
Yeah, I would just like to say that though at times Paul Stickney and I don't see eye to eye, one thing that Paul Stickney and I do agree upon is that the city of Sammamish is in need of a vision statement. And I believe that the work that will be done by approving this will lead us to, as David Pyle addressed, a vision statement for the city that will be the kind of like the driving force of our comp plan, which we then will be pushing forward and making adjustments to in 2023 or 2024. So the work we're doing here is something that needs to be done, and has maybe due to COVID, due to other reasons.
Hello, Madam Mayor. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes.
Okay, continue, Councilmember Treen.
We need to move forward on this. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Stewart. I believe she's going to be coming back.
Pam, can you hear us?
Can you guys hear me? I was trying to ask David a follow-up.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh.
You're cutting in and out.
Now you're cutting in and out. Okay, she wants to, can you read, David Powell, she wants to know, can you ask for the scope and types of questions in the survey and outreach?
So those are items that will be developed by the consultant. That's part of the purpose of this contract, is for them to develop those questions. They do have staff that have experience and are skilled in survey writing. So that is something they will be working on with city staff in prep for distribution of a survey.
David, if you go to page 51 of the agenda bill, there is a list of things there you might want to speak to. The goals of community visioning are.
Can you indicate which page of the actual packet or the agenda bill? Mine is broken up differently than yours.
Okay, it's page 51 of 109 in the packet that came down today.
Thank you, Tom.
It's the first page of Exhibit A, if that helps.
Got it. I found the page. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I believe this just frames what work the consultant will be doing. You can see here the goals that Councilmember Odell was referring to. The goals of community visioning are understanding what factors the community views as most important in community planning, help the community understand goals of regional planning policies and what is of the city and regional planning, conduct a statistically valid survey to gather input on aspirations for the future of Sammamish, engage a wide range of residents and stakeholders with particular attention to underrepresented or underserved populations, evaluate the current vision statement to better define how the community currently sees Sammamish and what it should become. So this is all prep work in advance of the council taking on their review of the current vision statement.
Great. And David, can you guys hear me now? Hopefully.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry about that. David, when we talk about the aspirations for the future of Sammamish, like the first ones talk about, we talk about regional planning policies, which I would assume for most people would they're going to glaze over. I was envisioning myself that this would include things like what kinds of services might people want, what kinds of businesses, or if they want more businesses, and what types might they want in the city. Even to the extent of things like, do people feel like they need more ball fields or not, right? These are all questions that have come up in the council that we may want to get some more definitive information on. So is that what you envision when we talk about the aspirations for the future of Sammamish, that all those types of things are included in there?
So I didn't draft this, but that's what I envision when I read this.
Okay. As long as we're all heading in that direction, because I do think, to Councilmember Bill's point, we want this to be fairly broad in terms of the topics, because we don't do this very often. And for $60,000, I think we do want to make sure we really do understand what people need, what they want, and what they are expecting from the city on a broad set of topics. So if that's what your intention is, then and that's what we think we're going to ask about it, I'm on board.
And I actually appreciate this conversation because it helps us better frame the work that the consultant is to be doing. So, to the degree that you're describing it right now, that is something that we definitely will press the consultant to make sure is included in the survey questions that they do push out.
Dave, it might be useful to go back and look at some of the past surveys. And if there's some questions that need to be repeated, it would be interesting to see how the community's changed.
Yeah, that's definitely a valid comment as well. And, something we can do is provide the consultant with past surveys to help them prep for the new survey and see, which questions would be valid to ask again to compare past answers to current answers.
Yeah, because I would love to see things like I heard today. I was on a call with some other council members from other cities, and one of the topics that someone brought up was that they're seeing a trend, and I don't have data, but it would be good to get the data from our city, that kids are delaying getting their driver's license. So a lot of kids aren't getting it at 16, they're waiting until 18 or even later. If that's the case, if we can include some of the teens and tweens in the survey to find out what do they need in terms of transportation, right? What might work for them if they're not getting their license, and again, back to what are they looking for in their city if they don't have that ability to drive. And I don't know if that's true for our city or not, but that would be a very interesting set of information and statistics to gather, those types of things.
Definitely.
Another thing is I think the ethnic makeup of our city has changed considerably in the last decade, and it could be there are some issues related to that too.
Yep.
All valid points. Really good points. Things that as a working in the community development profession, I get very excited about. It's so I'm really happy to hear these comments, and I'm thankful for this opportunity to have this conversation regarding this contract.
Thanks, David.
Yeah, keep in mind that we had a lot of kids that couldn't take their driving test because of COVID. So my granddaughter was running 18 months behind and being able to take hers. So we've got a lot of kids out there that weren't able to get theirs.
Yep.
We definitely want them properly trained before they hit the road. So
yes, we do.
Not too much OJT here, please.
Okay, so we have got a motion and a second on the floor. And this is do we have any more discussion? This is for the approval of Community Visioning Project contract. If there's no more discussion, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Excellent. Thank you.
thank you, Council.
Thank you. Okay, next up is new business, and this is the discussion of the Ebright Creek Fish Passage project. And this is going to be Jeff somewhere. There he is.
Thank you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members, and city manager. I'm going to share my screen. I have 4 basic slides. The goal tonight is to ask council for basically a change order, if you will, or authorization to negotiate a change order so that we can change the scheduled opening from September 1st to September 30th. Ebright Creek is our stormwater culvert that's been designed. We awarded it earlier this year. The work was started in April. As a result of a variety of factors that we have, on East Lake Sammamish Parkway, we're building a culvert. We had come to the council last December, I believe, and indicated that we wanted to do detour routes and do a full road closure, as it would save roughly a month's worth of time on the project. It was the concurrence of the council at that time that we would do a full road closure, and so we bid the project accordingly. Basically, this is akin to what we did at Zacchaeus Creek, where the entire roadway is taken for a period of 3 to 4 weeks, and the idea is for the contractor ideally to get in and get out. However, since we started the project, there have been several factors that have resulted in a delay. Some of these are industry standard issues dealing with COVID, lack of ability to timely get steel based on the design delivery, and manufacturing contributing to driving up costs, and a limited number of suppliers out there going forward. Our contractor has been working diligently with the supplier. However, we've had some challenges with revising the design in a way that can meet the availability of the certain kinds of steels that are out there. We were in line, we got out of line, and there have been a few other issues that we've been dealing with, all of which have begun a finger-pointing exercise as to why we can't meet the deadline. And we do have special legal counsel on board as well to help guide us going forward. We've had a number of issues dealing with shop drawing changes and so forth. And when it's all said and done, what we have heard today from our contractor in the meeting at 4 o'clock is the best information that he can supply to us right at this time that the supplier is telling us, and that is the culvert cannot be delivered until August 23rd. And we will need, ideally, to the end of September with some float built in there to be able to close the road, do the full construction and get out of there. There's also a possibility that we might need to extend the fish window into October, a week or two, to close out the project. And so we find ourselves in a challenge of an unexpected series of circumstances that have led us to this point. We are asking the council to direct staff, the city manager and the staff to negotiate a change order to change the date, and also to have staff develop and implement a robust communication plan to alert the community of these changes. Tonight with me, I do have Stephanie Sullivan, our project engineer, who's closest to these issues, as well as Senior Storm Program Manager Toby Cohen, and we're here to answer questions on this matter. Thank you.
Is this when I get to say it, Jeff?
You're first in line, Karen.
Okay. All right. So after I say I told you so. Okay. Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah. Hey, Jeff. Appreciate that update. And, the how we got here, probably not as important as what do we do now, right? And I think that's what you're asking for. My only concern is that I think it's August 30th is when Issaquah School District goes back to school, and September 1st is when Lake Washington School District goes back. So my concern is that while I don't think we're going to return to pre-COVID traffic levels, I think that it's going to feel really bad to a lot of people because traffic is going to be higher than it has been for 2 years. Or close to 2 years, right? A full year and a half. And so having that road fully closed at the time that school starts is very concerning to me because there is definitely a distinct drop-off and uptick of traffic with school. So I think you have in here that if we didn't do a full road closure, it would increase the cost significantly, but I think it's something we need to consider because I just don't see how we have that road fully closed when we start school. That just feels like a huge impact.
Your point is well taken. The options for doing something else, i.e. basically suspending, we don't know the explicit costs. We've put some parameters or ranges of potential things that, or certain levels, but we don't have an exact number on that. We are working diligently with the contractors, working diligently with the supplier. Our best option here is to get signage out very soon, the reader boards that say it's going to be closed, when it's going to be closed, do mailers, these are social media outlets, those kinds of things, unless the council wants us to embark upon hundreds of thousands of dollars in potential delay claims, which is the council's prerogative, but I just wanted to let you know that.
When you say delay claims, I'm not sure I'm totally following that part of it.
So if we do not build the project this year with these changes, the contractor will have to shut down. If you're going to suspend the project, then there's delay claims, there's overhead costs, there's other factors that the contractor will bring to light that will cost the city money, which I don't have at this moment in time. That level of detail. So thus in our agenda bill, I gave you a range of potential risk, dollar risk.
Sorry, I guess I was asking if there was an alternative to shutting the road down completely. If there's a way to, it may take more than 3 weeks, but is there an option to not shut the road completely after September 1st?
No, because the issue is that the culvert's going to take, as we originally planned, and how it's being designed and built and delivered. All of that is assuming a full road closure. If we were to look at doing one lane at a time, it changes that and it adds really another month. And then we're going to be way into the fish window that we have no guarantees that the permitting agencies that would allow us to go beyond October 15th if we're even, So we don't believe we have an option at this time the way that you're proposing it, Councilmember Stewart.
Wow. Okay. Because I will also say that it's also my understanding, just as an FYI, that Microsoft offices will also start opening up in September, and I don't have an exact date on that yet, but it's quite possible that could also be September 1st. So things to consider that would obviously impact our traffic quite a bit, and having that section of roadway closed would be a pretty big deal. That's all I got. Just wanted to kind of throw those things out.
Councilmember Odell.
Thanks, Jeff. This Erie Creek is probably the best kokanee spawning stream in the Lake Washington watershed. So, and we've been after this project for literally years. And I'm glad to see it coming into reality. However, I am getting nervous when you're talking about September 30th because the kokanee run will start as like second half of October, and it can vary by 2 or 3 weeks each way. When will the culvert part, forget the roadway, when will the culvert part be fully functional?
Stephanie, do you want to help with that?
Yes. The culvert installation, assuming it is delivered August 23rd, would then take those 3 weeks. So I believe the installation was looking about September 12th. I'll open up my schedule here and double check that date. But our permit window for the fish passage ends September 30th. We have talked with the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife and the Army Corps of Engineers, and they're willing to work with us a little bit. But the cutoff date that the Department of Fish and Wildlife was looking at was more like October 10th because of the kokanee window having that variability like you're talking about, Councilmember Odell.
Okay, my question really was not when is the culvert going to be totally buried. My question was, when will the waterway running through it be fish passable?
I'll have to get back on that.
Yeah, I don't have the exact date of that, Tom. I don't have the schedule in front of me, but I think what you're talking about is when is the bypassing done and when is the stream flowing again? Is that what your question is?
Correct.
Yeah, I don't have that, but we could provide that in a separate memo at a later date. I just don't have that right in front of me at this time.
Okay, Jeff, I would like to know that because this is something I probably need to alert the kokanee work group about. And they may have to have some sort of a plan B for it. Now, the second question is there anything that can be done once you get the pieces you need to stick in the roadway to accelerate this? Is this 8 hours a day, 5 days a week? Are you working 7 days a week, 12 hours, or what?
I think that's a great question. And Toby, I'm going to turn to you on this one because we've had conversations today about creativity and what we can and can't do. One little note that I will share is that we're looking at allowing the franchise utilities such as Comcast to work from 3 to 8 in the evening so that they can get out of the way and the contractor allowed to be set up. But Toby, were there some other items that we talked about today you'd want to share?
Yeah, there's some odds and ends. We talked about accelerating some of the utility relocates and the bypass piping with the contractor. Those are opportunities, I think. We also considered some of the different options for pavement restoration and these are things that would come a little bit after the fact, after the culvert's in, that would ultimately kind of squeeze that post-culvert installation time. Again, some of those.
I would encourage you guys to do everything you can to not let that date slide into October.
Yeah.
We, it's duly noted, and staff will attest. We have been working feverishly with the contractor and the construction team, and this is not the kind of news that we like to bring before council, but we will be doing what we can there, Tom. We appreciate that.
It's especially sensitive because they only had 82 fish to return last year. So this fish is hanging on the edge of extinction.
Thank you for your comments. We appreciate that.
Okay, thanks. If you can provide me separately that item you were talking about a few minutes ago. Thank you.
We will definitely do that. Thank you.
Okay, I do want to remind council when this came to us that it was a tight time frame, and I was the lone vote who said this was too tight of a time frame, that we needed to leave the other half of the road open, because you know what, when it comes to projects like this, there's always going to be an oops. We just can't rely on a schedule, and that's what happened here. So, I think we checked at that point in time. I think we checked to see if we could work through the night or whatever. We looked at everything, but I think we went back and looked at the figures, and there was just nothing at that point in time. It was going to be expensive, but now it would be even worse. Okay, is there any other questions that we have? Pam, I don't know if that's a question or a... Okay. All right. So what do you need from us? Let me read this quickly. Okay. So you need a change order.
On the floor.
Okay. So you need...
Madam Mayor, I'll make a motion that the City Council authorize the City Manager and or his staff to negotiate a change order to change the date of reopening East Lake Sammamish Parkway at Ebright Creek Crossing from September 1st, 2021 to September 30th, 2021, and that the city develop and implement a robust communication plan to alert the community of these changes.
I will second that, and I want to propose an amendment.
Okay, Councilmember Treen, did you want to, well, first, Councilmember O'Dell, do you want to make your amendment and then speak to it?
Yes, I will. Thank you. And I add another sentence at the end, and that city staff explore every means of accelerating completion of the project to ensure they meet the fish window.
I'll second that.
Okay, any other discussion on that? Okay. All those in favor of the amendment, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Now, Councilmember Treen, we are back to your original motion. And can you please repeat it for Lita?
I move that the City Council authorize the City Manager and or his staff to negotiate a change order to change the date of reopening East Lake Sammamish Parkway at Ebright Creek Crossing from September 1st, 2021 to September 30th, 2021, and that the staff develop and implement a robust communication plan to alert the community of this change as well as the amendment.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Madam Mayor?
Oh.
No, Madam Mayor, I'm in, sorry. So this is, I believe this is where we had Mary Wechter call in and request that we look, because Jeff will be detour for this, the Lewis Thompson Hill Road.
That is one of the routes.
So we had a request, and I think it should be part of this, to look at how we can ensure the safety of that road if we're going to be driving a lot more traffic on it around this. And so I didn't know, Jeff, if you had any thoughts.
Jeff, do detour zones already have their, are required to be a certain speed limit, are they not?
First of all, let me check with Stephanie. Do you recall if we had made a speed limit change as a result of the detours? Is that in our spec for any reason? No.
No, we have not.
Okay. So when we put this together, we identified the routes, and the council, this was back in December, I believe when we came back to the council, and we did not do any speed study work or anything else to change speed limits. If we're going to permanently change speed limits, I would caution the council of doing it from the dais, but maybe instruct staff separately to investigate that possibility. I'd like the subject matter experts to do the studies, and I'd like us to look at the code requirements that allow us to make changes and be sure that we're consistent in complying with those kinds of things. I think in the long run, Councilmember Stewart, it's a good idea, but I wouldn't want to make that decision tonight without additional help.
I would like to make an amendment that says that you investigate if we need to at least temporarily reduce the speed limit while it's a detour route, because there will be a lot more traffic on that road.
And we could do that in the first meeting in September. Jeff, this is not the first time we've done this, though. We closed it down when we did Zacchaeus.
Correct.
And used the same detour route. Do we have any thing that will tell us what the problems were, both there and on Snake Hill?
I don't have that information at the tip of my fingers. I'd have to research that.
And that might be a subject for a discussion with the police chief.
Yeah, like I said, I would have to research, I guess, lessons learned and were there any issues with Zacchaeus Creek's construction and the detours associated with those. Unfortunately, I just don't have it.
That was before your arrival. But I cannot recall any particular issues resulting from the traffic. The traffic will reflow by a number of means. They'll use 228, they'll use 212. And they may just simply avoid the area to some extent. But there is some history here we ought to look at if we can. Thank you.
And then I have one more question based on Councilmember Odell's amendment. If you're looking at accelerating that work, I would assume that could potentially accelerate the road reopening as well.
Mm-hmm. I believe that's the intention of the motion, is to maintain or accelerate to the best of our ability in working with the contractor, if I understand the amendment correctly.
Yeah, and Councilmember Odell was focusing on making sure we had the fish culvert open in time for the kokanee, which is obviously a priority here. But I was kind of asking the follow-on that if that culvert opens up earlier, does that necessarily mean that the other work might be able to be accelerated as well?
It would. It's sequential. Okay. So once the culvert is in the ground, and then they put the top on it, and then they backfill it, and then we pave it, and then we pull, the stream work. It's all sequential. So if we can get done earlier, hallelujah. But I can't guarantee that at the moment.
Right. And one last question is: in doing this delay, is there any additional cost to consider with this pushing out?
We will have costs. We will have costs associated with change. Part of the change orders will be the communication plan, putting out additional advanced signage. There'll be some of those soft costs that we need to consider. In terms of with the contractor, while he's reserving his right to claim, we do not have any handle on the magnitude, if any, and it all depends if he can make it, kind of thing. So I don't have any other numbers at this time.
But it sounds like we should be expecting a bill to come along with this change order as well.
The possibility exists, but I don't know the magnitude of that until we've had an opportunity to sit down with the contractor and discern that. Because what we heard today from the contractor, I will share, is that it all hinges on when the supplier can officially deliver the culvert. If it's on time or within the contractor's schedule, I doubt that we'll get a claim. If it's later, then all the little noodling issues that we've dealt with up to this point, he'll probably seek compensation or at least attempt to do so. So we're waiting to see and doing the best we can with that. So but it's a great question. Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay.
Okay. So, Councilmember Stewart, do we just go, I believe we are back to just the motion that was on the floor?
Councilmember Stewart's amendment is on the floor.
Okay. Did we have a second on her amendment? I didn't hear that. Councilmember Odell, did you say something?
I will second it.
Okay. We have a second from Councilmember Odell. Any more discussion?
City Clerk here, could we have Councilmember Stewart repeat her amendment proposal?
Sure. My amendment was to ask the staff to consider altering the speed limits on the detour routes, at least temporarily while they're detour routes for safety concerns, so that should be part of the work plan.
Okay, and so we're on discussion right now. So, Jeff, and if that's going to be considered, that would only change provided you can find engineering reasons as to why, because from what I have seen, when you lower speed limits, in many cases, that just causes young drivers to speed. So when the road calls for, the road to be driven 30, kids will drive 30 or 40. So my question would be, if you don't see reason to lower the speed limit, and there hasn't been a problem in the past, I don't want to just be lowering a speed limit for the sake of lowering a speed limit.
I think our motion used the word consider doing it, subject to our findings, and so I will rely on consultant services to research the issue, and we will consider it if it has merit.
Great, thank you. Okay, any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion on the floor, say yay.
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 Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? I think you have full agreement on it. I didn't hear any opposition. Okay, now can we go back to the original motion?
Excuse me. Councilmember Ordell has an amendment.
I think we addressed his amendment.
It passed.
Okay. I'm sorry, yes.
Okay. Do we have any other floating amendments out there? I don't believe we do, that I don't have written down. Okay, now we are back to the original motion. Councilmember Treen.
Yeah, so same motion that I read earlier, amended twice.
Thank you. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I'd like to do a time check on, the balance of the evening. And if we were going to go late, that's fine. Or we could possibly consider postponing an item until September, if it's the council's desire to do so. But I wanted to respect the evening and what we have going here. So could you advise if you want all the items to go forward or not?
Okay, well, what item are you thinking?
Possibly we could delay the discussion on the stormwater utility until September and bring it back at that time. I would really want to be sure that Republic Services, who's been waiting in the wings to make their presentation, and the other items that are on the agenda, or we can go really late. I just wanted to.
Okay, well, why don't we do this? Why don't we move the storm and surface water utility rate study? Why don't we move that to the bottom and see where we are then? Because we've had a lot of things take a lot longer tonight than we would have ever thought.
Okay, great. Do you want a health and safety break, or do you want to?
Yes, let's do a health and safety break right now. It is 5 to 10, and let's say a 5-minute health and safety break with coming back at 10 o'clock.
Okay. All right.
Hello, City Hall. Are we coming back?
You're taking us to 95.
Motion to extend to 10:30.
Oh, that's right. Actually, we should probably go to 11. How about a friendly amendment is that we extend to 11?
I say we'd be highly motivated to extend to 10:30.
Okay, well, all right, 10:30 it is. Okay, I'll second that. All those in favor of extending till 10:30, say aye.
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 Nay.
Okay, and opposed, who was the nay? I heard a nay in there somewhere. Okay. All right. Okay, so the discussion we are on tonight is Republic Service solid waste contract rate. And we have got Jeff, and I see Russell Drow. Welcome.
Yeah. So Mayor, Deputy Mayor, council members, and City Manager, tonight's introduction and quarterbacking of the item will be led by our Deputy Public Works Director, Audrey Starsey. Audrey?
Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Council. I just wanted to take the time to introduce Russell Joe. He is our Municipal Relations Manager with Republic Services, and the city currently has a contract with Republic from 2017 through 2025. And most recent discussions that were in front of council were a small rate increase in the amount of, I think it was 33 cents for residential customers, and a reroute that was effective earlier this year. And with that, I will leave tonight's presentation and turn it over to Russell.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members. Thank you for allowing me some time on your busy agenda to speak to you this evening. If I may share my screen, I will pull up the presentation that is in your packet. And there we go. Okay. First off, I wanted to share with you the fact that after this past legislative session, we were able to pass some pretty significant pieces of legislation that impact the climate and sustainability. The Clean Fuel Standard and the Climate Commitment Act that went along with it, along with the producer responsibility legislation, were all acknowledged in this ad that came out after the session was over. Republic Services is noted at the top of the right-hand column as being a team player that worked with the major legislators and the other business groups and organizations to get that legislation put forward and pass through this session. Now, the producer content legislation is particularly important for us because it does create an end market for us in the recycling industry. If the people that are buying our products
know that there's a certain amount of recycled content in there by law, it does make it more stable for our pricing, and they know what they're buying when they products from us. So I wanted to share that with you to let you know some progress going on in Olympia that Republic Services has been actively involved with, and both testifying and pushing through our trade organizations to get this climate legislation passed forward through the whole entire legislative process. Yes.
Oh, can you, I don't know if it's just my screen, but can you have your presentation be in slideshow, please, or enlarge it?
You bet.
Thank you.
There we go. Okay. So I've had a chance to talk with many of you about the recycling industry and the worldwide changes that occurred between 2017 and 2018. And certainly before that occurred in 2015, we were seeing some changes to the stream in terms of lightweighting. Water bottles were getting a lot lighter, so that it took us almost double the amount to still make the 1 ton of product that was shipped out. Also, people were reading the newspaper far less, and so we weren't getting the paper products through our stream as well. But really the major change that happened was when China's sword occurred and China shut its doors or exited from the worldwide commodity markets. It certainly had a big impact on the commodity prices. Those dropped dramatically as all of the product that was going to China was now stuck in the United States and was seeking a market. As a result, the pricing that we were able to get for our product dropped dramatically, and every company in our industry was looking for buyers that could take the product that we were putting through our material recycling facility. Then when you tack onto that the COVID-19 challenges that we had with the quarantine of 16 to 18 months long that we're just getting out of, that also had a pretty big impact on our company and our industry that I'll share a little bit more with you. On this slide, you know all the changes that had to be done or that we made to make sure that our customers were safe and that our drivers were safe in the field. You face the same challenges in the Public Works Department along the way. So one of the dramatic things that we saw was a shift in the way volumes were coming to us. In a ideal world, there would be a balance between the commercial and the residential amount of garbage so that it made sense in the way the contract was priced. As people stayed at home, the residential volumes, however, jumped dramatically, and the commercial volumes dropped dramatically. So this had the effect of basically putting the contract out of balance and making it quite difficult for us to manage along the way. However, we didn't have to lay off anybody, or we didn't have any challenges with employment or equipment at all, such that COVID was knocking us out of the game. We were still picking up the same amount of garbage. The mix was just different. And so our industry was still going strong as the amount of garbage didn't change, but just the way that it was put through the system changed a little bit. And that change did have an impact on kind of tipping the contract a little bit more negatively. When we look at China's sword, people often ask me, well, how bad was the pricing? And on the left-hand side, you can see the percent change in the various commodities that we process and how far they dropped between 2017 and 2020. And you can see that all the products that we produced through the material recycling facility did drop some. Some are starting to recover. But if you look to the right-hand side of the graph, you can see that the OCC, the other cardboard and the mixed paper, which make up about 75% of what we process and sell, fell fell between 50 and 60%, having a pretty big impact on what we're getting for our end product after it goes through the processing at our material recycling facility. So what's happening now in terms of domestic recovery? We used to ship about 15 to 20 million tons to China before national sword, as you can see from the bottom. So far, at least by 2020, we were only getting about 6 million tons processed, or demand. The demand was only about 6 million tons in the United States for the products that we were putting together. So some of our production, all of Republic Services no longer sends anything overseas. We're either sending our items to Canada or to the United States. Some of our competitors that are farther south do send some of their items to Mexico, as I understand it. I'll just give you an example in the plastics industry. We know that plastics need to be disposed of correctly. They need to be recycled correctly to be made into other products. And so we do ship some of our plastics to Canada. By the time we clean them, process them, bundle them up, and ship them by rail to Canada, we are losing money on that particular product. It's the right thing to do. It goes to the right place, and it produces the right product after it's recycled. But we're losing money on it, but we still continue to do it because it is the right thing to do, and we have a long-term commitment to recycling. Along with that long-term commitment, just briefly, is the investments that we've made in our material recycling facility. We've invested about $17 million in our facility south of Safeco Field, south of Lumen Field and T-Mobile Field. And we've invested in new products that will help us sort better and get contamination out. We've also invested in another line that will help us run the product through twice now instead of just once, so we can really work on getting that contamination eliminated. So again, that just speaks to the commitment that we have toward recycling as a long-term solution and the right solution going forward. So what are we going to look for in the next year as COVID loosens up and as we get back to life as normal? On the left-hand side, you see our kind of forecast for residential disposal trends going forward. We saw that residential volumes jumped dramatically early in COVID, as I touched on earlier, and then the volumes have flattened out, we believe, into 2020 into 2021 as people are adjusting to the new normal at home. Some people are staying home. Some school children are staying at home still. Some are back in their camps in the summer, et cetera. On the right-hand side, you see commercial volume, and it dropped pretty dramatically and is coming back a little bit at a time. And to share with you some information that I shared with my fellow board members on the Economic Alliance of Snohomish County this morning, we are seeing a little tick up of commercial volumes, indicating as an early indicator that restaurants and commercial businesses are starting to get going again. We think that's a great sign, but overall, we do believe that the new normal will have more people at home, but we do hope that the commercial does recover and tick back up as hospitality, travel, and leisure get back on their feet and restaurants are able to open at full capacity in the future. So, with all of these factors involved, I wanted to share with you what the rest of the nation is doing to kind of meet the challenge. About 53% of the cities have raised their rates. Tacoma's a notable one in our local area. Some have changed services, whether it's going to every other week recycling or eliminating some recycling. Counseling is on the fourth column there. Or they're changing their material list. Sometimes they'll go ahead and eliminate glass, for instance, if they don't have a glass facility that is close enough because of the weights and the high transportation costs. It's just not economically viable to recycle glass at times. We're fortunate in King County that our recycling facility is close to a bottle manufacturer that makes wine bottles, and so glass is still a commodity that we're able to clean, and then send over to them at a reasonable price, and that has helped stabilize the market here in King County at least. One other thing that we would ask that the council consider during this discussion is potentially looking at the price index that is in the contract. Currently, the contract spells out that yearly price increases will be they'll be attached to the consumer price index, universal all items. So that's basically the rate of inflation that you're seeing on a basket of goods for the area, and that has had a 10-year average of about 2%. We would ask the council to consider either switching to CPI water, sewer, trash, or a fixed rate, 4% is there as an example, to help reflect the unique qualities and dynamic costs and service realities of the sewer and trash industry. I think that as we look at it, we're not asking that any of the rates that we're proposing or any of the changes that we're making overall go back and try to make up for anything between 2017 and today, nor are we asking that the CPI itself go back and make up anything going back to 2017. Or we're only asking that going forward from whatever date we are able to make a change to the contract, that the CPI accurately reflect what is really happening in the solid waste industry and the price pressures that we do face, and that any change to the recycling rate that we look at going forward also reflects closer to reality of the new world that we're seeing in the recycling environment. So I wanted to touch base with you just quickly on some other changes that cities have seen to let you know what's happening in our market here in Puget Sound. So Mercer Island switched to a new contract, Recology, and when they did, they saw a 34% increase in their new contract, and they had to reduce services from every week to every other week recycling. Federal Ways saw a 50% increase when they kept waste management. They switched to every other week recycling. They had every week recycling before, and the rate did not include yard waste. It was now a subscription and a separate add-on that they had to put onto their service should they want to continue to do yard waste and food disposal. In Auburn in 2020, they saw a 33% increase when Waste Management was retained as their contractor along the way. And there were no real changes to that contract, but it does reflect that those are the types of price changes you're seeing when cities go out to explore either extensions on contracts or service with a new provider. Quickly to update, we re-signed a contract with Clyde Hill, as a public service customer. We signed a new 8-year agreement with them. There was a 9% increase in that contract. They adopted a 3% fixed price increase that we had worked out with them, and we were able to keep every week recycling and yard waste. And so I'm just bringing these numbers to you, these examples to you of what's happening in the market so that you understand that it's not just Republic Services that's having these challenges, but all across the industry, whether it's Recology or Waste Management, the increases are real and they're reflected in the new contracts that are being negotiated and worked out. So we will continue to actively communicate with your public works staff and sit down with council members or have phone calls with council members to let you know what the new developments are and how things are changing in the market. We would ask that the council consider amending the contract, I think is how we've discussed it, to perhaps put in a recycling surcharge. The surcharge could be put on the single-family homes per month, or a commercial recycling rate can be put in that reflects an increase to reflect the real cost of recycling in Sammamish. For instance, Tukwila is in the process of approving a 2-year 5% increase on their commercial customers that extends the prior agreement 2 years ago for a 5% increase. So they're essentially agreeing to 4 years total on that 5% commercial increase to reflect the real cost of recycling in the environment. We would also ask that the council consider changing from CPI as the price index on the contract to a 4% fixed price increase. That 4%, of course, is negotiable. We had talked to your public works personnel about also putting in a COVID-19 surcharge. We decided not to ask for that as COVID has gotten a little bit better with its economic environment. We're seeing recovery there so that any past costs that we might have had with COVID are not being asked to be made up or recovered through this request for ongoing. So the question then becomes, what direction would the council like to go with this? I know that in my conversations with 2 or 3 council members, they said that there were a couple of items that they would also like to see in any future discussions about the contract. And we're certainly open to noting those and finding out what the council would like to do with those particular contract provisions, and then come back to you with our proposals for those. We'd be happy to talk about those tonight or through your staff once you've had a chance to work with them. So what are the next steps? Would you like, the staff to come to get feedback from the council and then enter into discussions with Republic Services on this issue? Would you perhaps like to have a subcommittee of some sort take on the issue and look at the information? We're happy to provide any information that you might want. For instance, in Bellevue, they did ask for a financial review to look at what are the quote unquote real losses that we've been experiencing since China soared. We provided those to them along the way, and we'd be happy to do something similar to that if that gives you the type of information you need to make a good choice going forward. So all in all, we're asking whether the council would consider talking to Republic Services about amending the contract, talk about whether or not a fixed price increase provision would be appropriate, and whether or not a change to the recycling rate for residential and or commercial customers might be appropriate going forward. But if the recycling world is basically turned upside down, and I'll just close with this, that we're seeing real changes out there that are impacting the ability to provide services to cities. We certainly value the relationship we have with Sammamish. We love serving the customers in Sammamish, and we will continue to do so to the very best of our ability. But we do want to share with you the financial challenges that we're facing and want to see if we could work on trying to find partnership, a result that would enable us to continue to serve Sammamish to the high level that we believe you expect and you deserve. So that concludes my formal presentation. I'm certainly open to any questions that council might have.
Okay, well, thank you, Russell Joe, for the presentation. And we do have a list of people with questions. So we'll start with Deputy Mayor. Deputy Mayor?
Thanks. Sorry, I'm having some issues here with connectivity. Thanks for the presentation. I do have several questions just because I have concerns, obviously, with, when we start talking about a rate increase. I understand the quandary to which Republic Services and other waste providers are faced. But my first question is, I think we signed this contract in 2016. How many years are left on our current contract?
Ms. Starcy noted that the contract does expire at the end of
2025 in her introductory remarks.
Okay, so any changes that we would make to the contract would cease in 2025 when we would then presumably enter into a new contract. Is that correct?
Well, the contract pricing would be in effect between now and 2025, and then any new agreement that you made would effectively have new pricing in it going forward.
Okay, so we're looking for the next 4 years, so 2025. So I'm interested because you only brought up one city that's under Republic Services where you've had a contract change, and that was Clyde Hill, and they were 3%. So I'm interested in why they 3%. What was, you're asking us for 4. They got 3. I'm curious as to why. What were the circumstances there?
Oh, you're talking about the price increase mechanism in the contract that we're asking for? Yeah.
Yes, you're asking us to do 4%, and you said that Clyde Hill got 3%.
Right. I think that Clyde Hill was, without going too much into the minutiae of it, Clyde Hill was willing to work with us both on an overall rate increase in the pricing that was sufficient for us. It was also a long-term deal for 8 years. And they had in there a cleanup event as well, which did make it kind of the economies of scale for us to provide service to them with only a 3% price increase in there. We certainly, as I noted, have that as an element that can be negotiated throughout, and we would certainly bring any pricing and information to you to justify what we were asking for, and then we would certainly negotiate from there, staff or council as needed.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think, just knowing that there's I understand that theirs is longer. They've got 8 years on their contract. We have 4 left on ours. But I think, as a consideration for our constituents, and they're getting hit on a multitude of fronts right now, right? King County took a pause on stormwater increases, wastewater, I should say, because of the pandemic, and those are all coming back. So I'm cognizant of all the places that our residents will find increases that were delayed due to the COVID pandemic and concerns about those increases then. So, if there are other jurisdictions that you have examples of that are Republic Services specific, I'd be interested in those. And then if there's anything we can do negotiating with, I don't know what a cleanup event is that you mentioned for Clyde Hill, but I would certainly be willing to consider some other things if we can get a slightly better rate. So thank you.
Thank you for those comments. And I think the presentation tonight was just to give you information. And if we can start negotiations and talking about all these issues with staff or council going forward, that would be a big step toward, reaching a resolution that's favorable to both sides and is fair to both sides along the way.
Okay, next we have Councilmember Odell. I think you're on mute.
Mute, Tom.
You're on mute.
Can't hear you, Tom.
Somebody buzzed to push. Sorry, guys. Russell, good presentation. I would appreciate it if you could share with us the same type of information that the Bellevue Council asked you for. And I'm also curious as to what happens to Klahani in this whole situation. Because Klahani is a separate contract from from what the rest of the city has and you guys. Could you comment on that for a little bit?
Certainly. We'd be happy to provide the financial information as part of the discussion, and we'll certainly work with staff on what particular elements they'd like to see in there. Just to go back to Deputy Mayor Malchow's question about other cities, I can share with you in my area, we did a $1.60 per month residential charge for recycling that was imposed in 2020. So that was another city that we did have a agreement to do a recycling processing charge with. Monroe, of course, is a smaller city. The demographics are certainly a little bit different up there. They're not as close to the big city, so to speak, as Sammamish is. Tom Odell, I think that, can you repeat your question just really quickly?
With regard to Klahani,
right.
With respect to, say, 2025 with contract renewal.
Yes.
Or before.
Yeah.
So how does that fit?
Yeah. When Sammamish incorporated, they also started a drawdown for the area that's Klahani. Currently, it's serviced under the UTC kind of tariffs that are out there. So it's Utilities and Transportation Committee governs how those rates are set. When a city incorporates and they give notice to the UTC that they want to take over that area and put it into their city as part of, their territory, there's a 7-year drawdown there. So Audrey Starcy can probably give the exact date, but if that was started in 2016, 2023 would be the date that Klahani effectively no longer is a UTC area, but is part of the city of Sammamish. At that point, we certainly would want to have discussions with the city, but oftentimes cities would like to have all of their citizens be under the same rate structure at that point. And if that's something that you want to do as a policy matter, we certainly can talk about implementing that. If you want some other outcome, we can certainly look at the options that might be there. But as soon as Klahani's drawdown period is done, they will be have the opportunity to be under the same rate structure that the city has.
Right. I think right now the rate's higher, if I recall.
Yeah, that's a really good point. The rate is a little bit higher because they have been a little more aggressive in the price increases. They are more, the rates get looked at on a more regular basis. Usually it's a year to 18 months between each price increase. And the UTC has been open to looking at the commodity values that are there and giving price increases that are more closely reflected in reality, so to speak, or the current pricing that we're seeing at the MRF, the material recycling facility, or that we're seeing in the worldwide market for these goods. So their price increases have gone up a little bit more because of that. But you also need to recognize that those citizens do get a little bit of a refund depending on how the market prices itself out. So if things are more favorable in the market, they do get a little bit of refund or a reduction on their bill as part of a kind of a complicated calculation that's involved. So while the rate has been going up, I don't want you to come away with the impression that the hauler's keeping all that. There is a little bit of a rebate that goes back to the consumer. So I don't know if that's clarifying or not. Yeah.
It does. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Stewart, before we do anything, we need to extend. So I'm looking for a motion to extend till 11.
So moved.
Second. All right, you win, Mayor.
Sorry. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
All right. Very quickly, you kind of touched on this already. So part of the state legislation that passed this year will, in fact, create demand over time for the recycled materials market, right? So there's a requirement that many products will have to have an increasing amount of recycled materials in them, which should create a market, which may mean that your materials will go up and down. If that were to happen, would we be able to structure the contract so that we could see that reflected in rates if it's favorable? And it sounds like you have that, some sort of structure like that. And I would think we would want to look at something like that. For the rest of the city as well, because I'm optimistic, cautiously so, but optimistic that we will see more and more like that creates a demand for recycled materials in the U.S. and the full lighting industry as well. So that is definitely.
Councilmember Stewart, that's a great question. We did.
Sorry, I wasn't able to hear your answer.
Oh, can you hear me? Can everyone hear me right now? Okay. So that's a fantastic question. In both the Monroe example and the new contract with Clyde Hill, we put in provisions that allowed for a review of the commodity pricing on a regular schedule. So with Monroe, it was an annual look at the pricing, and then we had a formula that if the pricing for our commodities went up above a certain level, they would get a rebate, or the customers would get a rebate rather than have a surcharge for the recycling. Clyde Hill was a little bit different. There was a range that was set up. If the commodities fell below zero, then Republic Services could come back and ask for an adjustment to the rate. And if the commodity price rose above a certain historic average, then Clyde Hill would be eligible to come to the table and ask for an adjustment that would basically work out to a rebate for its customers. So we are very happy to allow the city and its customers to benefit from any rebound to the commodity market along the way, and we'll put a base bottom on there, so there's very little risk to the city. We think that the commodity markets have stabilized in the past, I want to say 4 to 6 months. We're not seeing the dramatic declines anymore. And so we hope that the commodity pricing will recover because of producer responsibility legislation, because we're getting more textile mills and paper mills put online as we're getting more demand in the domestic market. And so we don't think the prices are going to drop anymore, and it's more likely that the prices for commodities are going to increase, and the overall rate that gets charged to the customers for the recycling processing charge will be reduced as those prices do adjust back to, we hope, normal levels someday.
Okay, and then one other question. I don't know how helpful it would be in Sammamish because we don't have a lot of commercial customers, but is there any consideration of, is there a way for the commercial customers to see a rate increase that might be a little bit more to offset a consumer or residential rates rising?
Yeah, that's a great question. In Monroe, they do have more commercial customers and retail base than we do in Sammamish. So what we were able to do is the council, as a policy decision, was able to kind of balance out the rates a little bit so that the residential rates were a little bit lower and the commercial rates were a little bit higher.
the justification there was that the commercial recycling is often the recycling that is most contaminated or causes the most problems, whether it's the plastics from all the Fred Meyer stuff that's there that's not recyclable gets put in the recycling bin, those type of contamination issues. That was one of the ways they justified it, but the council as a policy choice can balance those rates out as they see fit to make it so that the burden might be a little bit less on the residential customers if there is enough of a commercial base to make it viable.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate it. And let's see if we can't help you out here and not hit our residential folks too much, but if we can, give them the ability to see the benefits as the market potentially improves, I think that might actually be a win for our residents.
Thank you.
Okay, Russell Joe, I had just a couple of quick questions for you. One of them is, I noticed that you had that one of the options was to not include the yard waste. And so I would love to see what that option would be for Sammamish, what that would cost.
Mayor, are you saying you want to have yard waste be subscription only?
Yes.
Okay.
And
we would certainly be happy to give that as an option in any pricing that we might discuss.
Okay. And then another one was, and that goes right along with bringing back a list of options. So, with every other week for pickup on, whether you would be picking up your recycling every other week or that sort of thing. So, what are the difference of costs and that sort of, what are the versus weekly and what would the savings be or what would the costs be? And then you mentioned that single family, doing things, the rates would change for single family homes. So what do you consider to be single family home? Is that, I'm just wondering what that term means for you.
Yeah. Sure. I think that we would certainly look at the billing for Sammamish, but it generally means that there's one bill going to an address that is only serving one family in volume, basically.
Okay, so I'm just wondering if that is like condos would not be considered, or I'm just trying to see how you would divide that up. I'm coming from the Water and Sewer District. I'm just trying to see how you would divide those up.
Mayor, it would depend on how they've set up their billing. So if your condo just pays one bill for a big commercial dumpster, then that wouldn't be considered a single-family home. If the condo unit is set up so that there's a separate account to each condo unit in a 6 or 8 unit facility, then those probably would be counted as single-family homes.
Okay, so that in itself could make a big difference on the numbers that we're talking. Okay. Okay, that was all I had in particular, because that could just make a big difference in what we have in our numbers. Okay. Next, we've got Councilmember Ross. Oh, yes, Councilmember Ross.
No, thank you, Mayor. You actually asked my question. I appreciate it. So I don't have any further.
All right. Well, then I think that we are set with.
Could I give one other comment on the every other week option?
Yes.
That you brought up, Mayor. One of the concerns we have with every other week service, especially in Sammamish, where you are at an elevation of about 1,000 feet or above, is when inclement weather hits, we miss service on the recycling day, perhaps, and then we wouldn't be back until 2 weeks later. So if you're on an every other week schedule, potentially you could have a full month of recycling, gather and collect in the residential property before we come back.
So that's one of the dangers or kind of pitfalls of every other week service. In the summer, we just had a heat event where we had to pull back some of our routes because we didn't have air conditioning in all of our units. Our drivers were under heat stress going in and out of the trucks. And so in a summer event, if we miss yard waste, you potentially could have a full month before we come back for yard waste.
Right.
Right. And there, when you've got the heat there with the eggs or the meat that's in there, it could really cause a big sting if you're not careful. So just some cautionary notes there as we talk about these issues.
Okay, I'm writing that down because I'm trying to look at, because I remember when we looked at the cost of this last time, one of the biggest complaints that we had were people that were paying for an empty bin that was sitting there because so many were paying for an empty bin, and they have got people that do their yard service. So they were paying their yard service, who was taking away all their yard clippings and everything, and they're sitting there paying for an empty bin. And townhomes and stuff like that pay for it as part of their fees. So, so we've got, you're going to have, I guess, the arguments on both sides of that. Okay, so, any other questions that we have for Russell, Joe? Okay.
So in closing, I guess I would ask, is the council going to direct staff to study the idea and come back to Republic Services for discussion, or what's the council's desire on this subject?
I think that we'll probably have asked the staff to bring us back all the answers that are for everything that we asked for first, and then probably make a decision from there, would be my guess.
Okay. And then on the financial information that Councilmember Odell asked for, what do you want to see in there?
Well, certainly the same things you gave to Bellevue for their council, but for information from us, relative to us.
Okay.
I can get, your corporate financials I can get publicly. So we'll look at that as well.
Okay. So, Councilmember Odell, just to help you out a little bit, the corporate financials don't break it down all the way to what we call a BU level, a business unit level. So the Bellevue office that services Sammamish, for instance, is a small business unit that you wouldn't be able to use the corporate financials to get all the way down to the nitty-gritty of the service to Sammamish necessarily. I think we could get to you the kind of revenue and expenses broken out to show year over year losses or gains for each of the years that we've serviced Sammamish to some degree of accuracy would be what I think we could probably produce for you.
Sure, I'll take it. If you want to give me your operating picture at the local level, that's fine.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor, did you have another question?
I did, yeah, because Russell had asked at the conclusion there kind of how we were proceeding forward, and I'm not sure we've really landed on where that is. I think we need a few of these answers, including the financials that Councilmember Odell is seeking. But then I feel like, if we're going to direct staff, and I don't think we have formally directed staff to engage service yet. I think there's a few pieces of the puzzle we need first. And then they need to have firm kind of idea of where it's at in totality before they start engaging with Republic Services. we seem to have opposing views when it comes to yard waste and what we do with that, or recycling, whether we go every other week. I mean, I'd be the first to say I don't want to go every other week on recycling because my recycling bin is full every week. And the fear is if I'm not alone, that is going to end up in someone's garbage can instead.
Well, one, I would agree with you on that, but I think what I said was that we needed to get the answers to our questions first, and then the council would talk about it, and then probably then get it back to staff with direction. Okay, so
are we looking at a study session then? Presumably then?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, we'll work with Public Works. Jeff and Audrey will grill us, I'm sure, endlessly, and we'll get those answers back to council.
Great. Thank you, Russell Joe and Audrey. Always good to see you.
Thank you. Good night.
Okay, so council, we have 8 minutes left. Okay, so next we have the planning for the reopening of the city facilities and in-person services. And who's going to be taking that this evening? Scott. I think you're on. Oh, no, we can't hear you.
Might need to go Sam's the earbuds. I don't know if there's a Bluetooth issue. Maybe.
What about, is anyone getting me yet?
Ah, there you go.
Now we can hear you.
All right.
Got you now.
I'm not sure what the difference was because that's where it's been all evening, but hey. So, Mayor, I just wanted to do a quick check-in right now. I know we have 3 different agenda items still left on the agenda. I just want to make sure that you all want to proceed in the current order, because I know there's one piece that really has to be done tonight, but I'm happy to proceed with this agenda item right now if you'd like to go that direction.
We do.
Perfect. So I know council's been very interested and understandably about how and when we both open up public meetings and also reopen City Hall. And this has been a work in progress. And so what we wanted to come to you tonight with is where we are in the planning process and what our draft reopening plan looks like for public meetings, and to let you know that there's a lot of work going on in the background to get us prepared for actually reopening City Hall and what that looks like. So I am going to quickly share my screen and make sure I get on the right one here. All right. Can you all see there we go. Perfect. So what we've done is we've kind of taken a look at what other cities have done with their different plans and kind of picked if you will, a hybrid approach. And so we're looking at what we want to do is lay it out in stages rather than try to pick specific dates, because as you all are aware, information changes rapidly, and where we are in the COVID response has changed quite rapidly over the last few months. So what we wanted to do was to pick some criteria and some phases to say what's going to happen when we get to this point. So in this chart that is in your agenda packet, stage 1 is where we are today. And so we are remote, all remote. Most staff is remote. Public comment is all remote, and there's no in-person attendance. The next stage that we would look at is if the governor lifts the OPMA, we will be prepared to do a hybrid approach to start with, which is that it's remote. Council could optional in person, kind of like they are now. And then public comment, we would set up a way for public to comment. They wouldn't necessarily be in chambers yet, but we would have space for them to come into the building and provide public comment. One of the key things that I want to note here is that no matter what we do moving forward, we want to be able to have the public, once we reopen the doors, have the same experience, whether they're in the building or whether they are. And by that, I mean being able to speak to you all as the council in person and for you to see who's speaking. So that's one of the things that we're working on moving forward, is to make that available so that it's a one-for-one experience, whether you're in person or in the building. Again, staff would be either remote or in person under stage 2, and there would be limited public attendance. Stage 3, and this is really tied to when we are able to reopen City Hall, and this is where we would expand our meetings and actually open up the chambers to the public to actually come in and sit. We would still be requiring masks for that time period, but could come and sit in person and speak to council in public comment like we did pre-pandemic. There would have to be social distancing, and we would have to spread out the chairs, and we do overflow seating in the lobby if necessary. And then one of the things that we're working on, and I know you all have sort of asked about, is this notion of what's the new normal. And right now our draft plan is that in the new normal, City Hall is open, but we're going to continue to have a hybrid approach, both for staff and for the public, to be able to either, if they choose to come in person, we can accommodate that. And if they choose to, if they need to come remotely, that we can accommodate that as well. And again, that experience is the same no matter what. And then it would be normal seating in chambers, and things would look and feel roughly the same, with the exception of that we'd be up on screen, and we'd be able to see people that call in remotely on the screen. So in terms of reopening City Hall, there's a lot of moving pieces that are going with that. And in your agenda packet, I just want to go through some of those things that we are considering. We have an internal staff working group looking at all the different components of what it looks like to come back into the building, about what we need to be aware of, about how often people are coming in, about where, if we need to change any of our setup within the building. And then we're also figuring out the technology about how we move to a more appointment-based model, because I think it's been proven over the pandemic that we've been able to do appointment-based online business and continue to provide the same level of service pre-pandemic. So as we come back, I think we're trying to be smarter and do business better. And we're looking at how do we do that so that we can really maximize people's time and guarantee an appointment when people come in, and really make that improve our service while we actually create our new normal. And then for folks for a lot of people, they haven't been in the building for a year and a half. So as we do this, we're trying to figure out who comes back first, how do we set that up, and then once people come back, we have to test our technology to make sure that it works right, and then set an opening plan. That seems like a lot, and it is, but I think we're also trying to sort of match what the norm is between different cities. And I think different cities, there's a lot of different arrangements that are going on in our neighboring cities. And I think what we're aiming for is looking at starting in the fall, at the beginning of September, when we come back from council break, that we are going to be prepared to start to open. At least that's the draft idea right now. So we wanted to let you know that this is in process, and that if the OPMA does get lifted, we will be prepared for that to start with. But City Hall reopening, we're still working on that plan, and we will come back to you either through email or communication when we get to that point to say, here's where we're going, here's when we're going to start, here are the services that are going to be available first, here's what we're looking at for full reopening. And I don't want to give you a specific date right now because I think we have a lot of details to work out, but we wanted you to know that there's a lot of work going on the back end to try to make sure that we are ready, and that first and foremost, that we are, for the safety of both our staff and for the public, that we have a deliberate plan, that we've thought through everything we can think through, and make it safe for everybody involved. So with that, I don't want to take any more time out of our evening, but I'm happy to respond to questions if you have them.
Okay, I keep seeing questions are popping up here, so okay. Okay, I think, let me look here. I believe the first question is Deputy Mayor.
No, that's cues from the left.
Okay, then the first question is going to be Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Really appreciate you presenting a couple of questions. First one is a technology question, which is, have we considered a technology other than GoToMeeting? We inevitably, in every single council meeting, have technology issues. And so while I love the idea that even in the new normal, we will continue to have a hybrid option, particularly for the public, to engage the public, I am not convinced that GoToMeeting is the right technical solution there. So is that something you guys are looking at?
We are looking at that. That's one of the things we're trying to figure out, what the right technology is moving forward. I think, actually, I know in having conversations with the folks involved that one of the GoToMeeting was the available one when this all started, and we pivoted to that quickly. I think now is a great time, as you point out, to assess what works well and what maybe doesn't work quite as well, and what might be available that is a better option moving forward. So definitely.
And then it's not totally clear to me what are the metrics that we're going to use to determine when we move from one phase to the next, if you will. That's my first question. And then the question is, do we have a plan in case, just in case, we have to go backwards so that we're not trying to develop those on the fly? So all things, going well, and I'm not trying to jinx it, but, if we do have another surge in the fall, I think we should, as we're developing this, we should have those criteria so that we know what to do if we have to start moving in any other directions.
Thank you, Councilmember. I really appreciate that question, and I will answer them kind of at the same time, but sort of in reverse order. The answer to the question about what happens if we have to go backwards is we're trying to take our time and be deliberate because things keep changing so rapidly. And so rather than go full force and just say, we're going to reopen at this time, that's why, to get to the first part of your question, when do we start things? The first one would be if and when the governor lifts the OPMA waiver. That's the very next criteria for moving into stage 2. And then stage 3 would be we expand public meetings when City Hall is prepared to be open, because if we're going to open up public meetings, we have to be ready for City Hall to be open. And that means we have to have safety measures in place, and we have to know how we're going to, how often we're going to clean. We have some equipment that is still on order that hasn't arrived yet, that we need to get set up for safety measures. So that's why we're trying to be a little bit deliberate and I don't want to say our feet, but not give you a specific date about when this happens, so that we have things in place. So that if we get to a point where the governor says, we have to step back in phases, then we can roll back accordingly, according to this plan, and say, okay, do we have to go back to phase 2? Do we have to go back to phase 1?
Okay.
Yeah, please go ahead.
It doesn't really answer, because I don't see that criteria, and I'm not totally convinced that we have to wait for the OPMA waiver to be lifted. The waiver is there if we need it. It should. I don't know that needs to be the trigger for us moving forward. I feel like our criteria ought to be more based on the situation on the ground as it relates to COVID, as opposed to that. I mean, obviously, if the governor were to reenact something, we would have to potentially, comply. But I don't know that we have to wait for that, because he may leave that waiver in place for a really long time for jurisdictions that are really struggling for whatever reason, because that is a statewide thing. So I don't think we should wait for that. The other thing I don't see on here is our communication plan for the public, because I think we should get a plan in place and be able to really communicate it out to the public. And I appreciate we need to know when we can open City Hall, but I guess I was expecting this plan to not just be about public meetings, but to be the plan for being able to reopen City Hall. And I think it would be also good to be able to share community in addition to things like masks and temperature checks. But are we doing anything for the ventilation system? I mean, cleaning is important, but I think the science backs it up that the spread of COVID is much more airborne than it is, based on what you're touching. And so things like, do we have an improved ventilation system or air purifiers, or what are we doing for that? So I would hope that we could get a plan that shows all of those pieces that we can share with the public. So if people are considering coming back into City Hall, they have all the information they need to know if it's safe for them and their particular situation and their family situation.
Thank you, Councilmember. Those are great points. We will definitely roll those in. And again, I think we wanted to provide you where we are at the moment. And I recognize that what you're describing, we're not there yet. And so that's part of what we wanted to do, is come to you and say, particularly given this is the last meeting before your break, that we're not quite there yet, but we will be, and we will get that out. And I appreciate your comments about communication plan for the public. That is one of the pieces in the staff report that I apologize, I neglected to mention. That's got to be a key component of what we do, is to let the public know about what is happening, why it's happening, when it's happening, and what's involved in it.
Okay, and hopefully you're getting the support you need from the emergency manager. I would hope that he's providing you with plenty of support, especially if it sounds like we're still waiting for equipment. I would have hoped that would have been something we ordered a long time ago, because while we've been shut down, there are people who have been working in City Hall all through this. So I would hope that we've been getting that kind of stuff in place to protect all of our employees throughout this pandemic. So it would be interesting to find out what exactly it is we're waiting for, especially given that we had we were given funds to spend to do just that, right? To make the workplace a safe place. And I would think that if we made it safe for our employees, it would be safe, generally for the public as well. So it sounds like maybe we have some gaps in what we've been doing to keep it a safe place for our employees. It's a little disappointing, but thanks.
I appreciate the comment, Councilmember, and maybe I maybe led you a little bit astray. This equipment was ordered quite a while ago, and it's just, there's a backlog for this kind of stuff. They were on top of it. It was ordered before I came on board. It just hasn't yet arrived. It's supposed to come, I think, any time now. But that's just one of the components of, and also, Councilmember recognized that City Hall has been very, very, very light in terms of staff actually in the building, which is one of the reasons we're trying to be delivered about when we bring people back, that it's going to be quite different. We've been running maybe 10 or 12 staff members in the building on any given day or less.
Okay. All right. And I know that there's probably some differing opinions here, but I am fully supportive of the new normal, also offering some hybrid solutions, even if it's not full-time, but for staff where it makes sense, because I think that there are a lot of benefits to that. And I know that companies like Microsoft are doing that as well, right, to look at offering some additional flexibility. It can help with, work-life balance. It can help for those who may have small children who may not be able to go back to school in the fall for whatever reason. And it also will help with the environment and traffic, right? If everybody worked from home 2 days a week, we would reduce traffic and greenhouse gas emissions for commuting by 40%. So small steps like that can have big impacts, big positive impacts. So I am supportive of something, a plan that looks like that as well, especially if we're able to offer the public certain services, both in person and remote as well, so that our citizens don't always have to come in to City Hall to get what they need. That can be a huge time saver for them as well. So appreciate that. Nice work on that.
Okay, Councilmember Stewart, since you're helping us do this, it is 10 after 11, so you have to help us extend.
At 11:30. Second.
All those in favor of extending to, I think you said 11:30, say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
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 Ooh. Okay, we're getting close. Okay, we're at a 3-4. Okay, continue on. The next one is Councilmember Odell.
Thank you, Karen. Scott, I agree with all the stuff that Pam just said about the reopening. And I'm not going to repeat every point because we are short of time. Question for you. Give me a couple of examples of the equipment we're waiting for.
Councilman Rodell, excuse me, that's probably one of the lowest of the things that we have to get done. There's just a couple of pieces of equipment for the public spaces in the lobby that we're waiting on. Most of the rest is already there. For instance, in chambers, we already have all the screens up. I think that one of the things that we're looking at are some stations for doing public in-person meetings out in the lobby where we could set up stations that were socially distant and safe. And I think there's just a couple of things we're waiting for. I can double check on that with our Parks and Facilities Director, Anjali, and get back to you. But I think those are minor compared to some of the other components about actually the technology that we need, making sure that we test it all, and then making sure that we have everything prepared for when people start to come back in whatever version of that is, whether it's a few days a week or more days a week.
Okay. I agree. If it's a couple of tables we're waiting for, that's a pretty minor deal. How many, what percentage of staff has been vaccinated? Do we know that?
Councilman Rodell, I don't have those numbers off the top of my head.
Well, about 97+% of Sammamish has been vaccinated. And those are the people, by and large, should be coming into City Hall. I think the issue of safety, the HVAC thing, is probably the one I'd look at first, because that is probably has the biggest payback. I don't know what can be done, but we should find out. I note that Redmond is now open City Hall. I don't know what the situation is with respect to Issaquah and Bellevue and Woodinville and places like that. Do you know?
Councilmember, a couple of those places I don't know. I know Redmond is open for limited hours. I know Issaquah is open for limited hours. But, for instance, for Issaquah, their staff is not returning until a little bit later. They're open for limited services right now as well. I know that I looked at Shoreline, and they're open for limited hours, but their staff don't start to return until, except for those limited services, until September 7th. I know that Mercer Island, their staff is not returning until they're being phased in over the summer, and they're looking at a September start for reopening. Newcastle has a September 7th start for all staff return under a hybrid schedule. Renton is also set for a September 7th return for them as well. So it's a mix, to be honest, between the different cities, and it just kind of depends on where they are at the moment and what their comfort level is in their facilities and how they choose to set that up.
Okay, well, we need to balance staff comfort level with what the public wants in the way of access. I don't think the sheriff has cut back on his staffing too much, judging by the parking lot, nor has our own police department. So there's a bit of on the one hand, on the other hand there. With regard to the governor's OPMA suspension, that I agree with Councilmember Stewart that is something that's at this point probably optional for us. There are parts of the state which are still having major problems. There are parts of the country that are still having major problems. But the east side of the Puget Sound area is not one of them. Auburn, maybe, but I think that's as far north as it gets. So my hope would be that we would find ways to accelerate this whole thing, because I think the sooner we get back to a more normal way of doing business, the better it would be for the city and the residents. With that, I'll stop and go to the next guy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Councilmember Ross?
Thank you. My first impression of this is way too over-engineered. We really need to stick to fundamentals. First question that comes to mind, why aren't we at least open for limited hours to the public? That's a question, Scott. How would you respond to that? We have over 95% vaccinated. Why should we not let our residents in at least limited hours?
Councilmember, the best answer that I can give you is that we have not gone through the process yet to make sure that we have everything in place. And that is, the city has lots of other things going on, and we've been managing to provide service remotely for a year and a half. And we understand that it is important, and we're working quite hard on it. I will say that part of this is that I've been trying to spearhead this, and I unexpectedly had to take some time away, and it got derailed a little bit. But I would also say that, we're making sure that we're working out the bugs and trying to figure out how we provide that service as we come back. And we've just got we've got a few issues that we need to work through. And quite frankly, we're making sure that for all of our staff that have been away from the building for quite some time, that as we are cognizant of the fact that some people may not be quite comfortable yet. And so we're making sure that we are taking care of the safety of our staff, as well as so that when people start coming back in the building, that they feel safe and that our customers feel safe.
Wow. With all due respect, this feels like, even with a task force behind this, it feels like a bureaucracy on steroids. Some other fundamentals I want to highlight. Number one, I believe we need to immediately allow some access to public immediately. As far as meetings are concerned, council meetings, I'm okay with a hybrid staff. In fact, staff does spend a lot of hours after hours beyond their workday supporting our meetings. So I think giving them option for remote in a council meeting, I think, is fully appropriate. Council members should lean, other than concerns they may individually have, towards full attendance. These meetings aren't as productive with council members, especially in executive sessions when we're collaborating. We need to get the council back. As far as the public, I think the public should be admitted to the council chamber immediately. And your comment on them having to wear masks at the later stage, that's a little bit silly if they're, again, 95+% vaccinated. If they're concerned about coming in, then they can make that choice and use the remote meeting option, which I also support as a secondary option to the public. But open the doors to meetings for the public, for the council meetings, hybrid for staff, hybrid for the public, and hybrid for council, I suppose, but lean towards encouraging full council participation in person. And that's my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Councilmember Gamblin?
Yeah, Councilmember Ross covered my thoughts. Thank you.
Okay.
So, Mayor and Council, if I may, I appreciate all the feedback. We will go back and regroup and we will be in communication with all of you about what the next step is, and taking all of you into consideration as we move forward with all due haste with our with our reopening plan. Thank you. Appreciate your time tonight.
Okay. Well, Scott, thank you for hanging on till after 11 to come and talk to us.
Absolutely.
Okay. Have a great evening. Okay. So next up, we have got, let's see. Okay. The next thing that we have got is what was moved down, and that is, hold on, I've got it rewritten here. It was added by Deputy Mayor, and this is the adding of 21-532 while repealing 21-529. Deputy Mayor?
Yep, I would just like to move adoption.
Okay, and I'll second. Did you want to speak to it?
Yeah, I'm sorry, did we get a second?
Yes, I
Yes, you did.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so I think based on the Growth Management Hearing Board's decision that was the city, that we need to take this action to move into compliance.
Okay. Discussion?
Can someone actually read what the actual motion will do? Because I don't think the public has any idea what's happening.
Maybe Lisa can read the ordinance. I don't have it in front of me.
Hang on, I'm going to have, okay, we're going to have city manager read it.
Mayor, members of council, I'll read the draft ordinance. City of Sammamish, Washington, ordinance number 02021-532. An ordinance of the City of Sammamish, Washington, repealing ordinance number 02021-529 and establishing an effective date. Whereas on June 30th, 2021, the Growth Management Hearing Board issued its second finding of noncompliance in Jaron et al. Versus Sammamish, and therein invalidated the city's moratorium adopted in ordinance number 02021-529, semicolon. And whereas, pursuant to the second finding of noncompliance, the city must achieve compliance on or before August 2nd, 2021, semicolon, and whereas the city desires to repeal ordinance number 02021-529 to formalize the Growth Management Hearing Board's invalidation of 02021-529, semicolon. Now, therefore, the City of Council of the City of Sammamish, Washington, do ordain as follows. Section 1, repealer. Ordinance number 02021-529 is hereby repealed in its entirety. Section 2, effective date. This ordinance shall be published in the official newspaper of the city in the city and shall take effect and be in full force 5 days here after the date of publication. Sorry for that misspeaking. Adopted by the City Council at a regular meeting thereof on the 13th day of July 2021, City of Sammamish. It will be signed by Mayor Karen Moran, attested to and authenticated by Lita Hatchie, City Clerk, and approved as to form Lisa Marshall, City Attorney. Thank you.
Okay, and I'm not seeing any.
One more question. What is the official newspaper of the city? Since we don't actually, what
Seattle
newspaper
Times.
is that?
It has been for 20 years.
Seattle Times.
Yeah. Okay. Just making sure. So So it'll take effect 5 days after it's published in the Seattle Times.
That's correct.
Okay. Not seeing any questions. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. That leaves us with one thing left on our agenda, and that was the discussion of the utility rate study. And we were going to look at moving this to fall, to September. And Jeff, is that what you wanted to do with this? Which is okay by me because I had a ton of questions on here. And I can email them to you. Be ready for September.
Madam Mayor, I move we defer the discussion and action on this item until the first meeting in September.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
All right, so that takes us to, do we have any council reports or for the good of the order?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
I have a council report.
Okay, Councilmember Treen?
Yeah, I just wanted to let the rest of the council be aware that I had a conversation today with the mayor of Bellevue, and she first paid her condolences for Bellevue resident was shot and killed at Factoria on Wednesday night at 8:30. Happened to also be one of my students. And so she called to just have a chat with me and see how I was doing. And in the conversation, she is, how do I want to say this? Encouraged me to take the grief and the loss and channel it towards looking at legislation at the local level that might work towards the stop of gun violence in our cities here on the east side and in King County. But less King County, more at how to do it at a local level. So just to let you know that that's something that happened, and I'm looking at it seriously. To be honest with you, I have no idea what that would look like or what that means, and so I have committed myself to meet with the city manager. I will also be meeting with, as soon as the chief of police has some time, I would like to meet with him and see what we can do at the local level, because I'm fully aware of my responsibility as a representative of the city, that our main issues are land use issues. And so this one is a challenge for me. So I just wanted to let you all know that. And then the second one is if the residents are still listening, there is I've been 2 days now watching the hearings, and I just would like to let the residents know that on Monday the 19th at 9 a.m. there's an opportunity for the public to make their comments known to John Galt on the issue that he's seeing that the city is facing. So I just wanted you all to know that we should encourage our residents to encourage stand by city staff that they're following the code and doing their job to the highest level, and really appreciate Kelly and the community development department under the leadership of David Pyle. I think they deserve a lot of credit, and our legal team deserves a lot of credit too for all the work that they're doing. Just from the last 2 days, it's just amazing. So thank you for listening and taking this time. Thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing me to speak. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Treen. And I am very sorry to hear about your student. Okay, yes, residents, please be involved and call in on Monday and support the staff because, yes, they've done an amazing job. Okay, so we are...
Madam Mayor, sorry, we referenced the hearing, but I don't think we ever said what the hearing was. So if residents were listening, they would have no idea what subject matter to which they'd be calling in on.
It is the hearing for the town center.
Yes, I just figured we should mention that so that they would know.
Yeah.
Thank you, Deputy.
Okay. Back to the what is on the table, which is all those in favor of dismissal. Say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Have a great summer, everybody.